everybody. It's me, Patricia Cori. Welcome to Beyond the Matrix, the program that asks you to think outside the box. And I've been doing that. I've been having some wonderful guests on it. Today is no exception. Dan Willis is back with me. I do love Dan, and we're going to take it in a different direction today because we're both old Atlanteans and know it and have some very similar experience, which we want to share with you. So before I bring Dan on, I want to show you something very, very interesting. About 2 months after my book, Atlantis Rising, check out the cover. I'm not doing a promotion. Just look at the artwork. Okay. This artwork was done for me, not by the publisher, but by someone who I basically worked with an artist and told them this is something that I see all the time in all of my dreams, astral journeying. It's getting tiresome. And he depicted it this way. So a couple of months after the book came out, somebody sent me this. I hope your minds will be as blown as mine was when you see this. Because she also sent, and unfortunately, I lost it in the move from Italy to Portugal, a newspaper article that was dated before the book that said this woman in Arkansas keeps making these bizarre things and doesn't know why. And she had them all, pictures of them all over her house, and she kept making these devices. And when she sent it to me and I opened the box, she said, Trisha, when I saw your book, I almost fell off the chair. She said, I don't know what this is all about, but I just keep seeing these in my dreams and my altered states, etc., etc. So I want to talk about that today because I don't know if Dan has any knowledge about that, but remember that this is the image. And in the book, if you haven't read it, please read it. The Sirians talk about how the Atlanteans use something not unlike a Tesla coil to use the coil to as a mind control device, pulling in the energy of mind into the crystals, to these giant crystal spheres. They were underground. And in the beginning, they were used to illuminate the Atlantean cities. And later, when I talk about mind control, the dark priesthood understood that they could utilize this energy for their own means. And hence we have something not unlike the mind control underway today. So I think I'll show that to you again during the conversation. But for now, I just want to set the stage because we've got a lot of things to talk about, including our mutual, I probably wasn't as friendly with him as Dan was, but our mutual connection to the infamous, the wonderful Marcel Vogel and his extraordinary knowledge of crystals. So here we go. Thank you. Stay tuned for Beyond the Matrix.
The Matrix is a green screen in your mind, imprinting programming to make you believe it's real. It's not. Break free. Join me, Patricia Cori, and my guests on Beyond the Matrix, where there is light, where you can dare to be free. Beyond the Matrix.
And here he is. There's Dan. Hi, Dan. Thanks for being with me yet again. What is this, our fourth time together?
This should be a fun exploration of somebody who we both mutually knew. Yes.
Yeah.
And the technology and science behind consciousness and the interface of geometry. Yes.
Yeah. And how eventually, like, I'd love to take the conversation to how the Atlanteans, in this world that we're in at the moment where nobody knows what to believe, everybody's all over the road. We've got every kind of person declaring to own the truth. There is a common thread that we can all hold on to. And that is a lot of ancient Atlanteans are back in this moment on this planet. And a lot of us really know it. And a lot of us have extraordinary memory. And usually it's connected to crystal. So we've glorified this and talked about the great Atlantean knowledge of crystals, and in many generations, in many epochs of crystal awareness and development as civilizations. And that's included in my book, talking about the original sweet days of innocent Atlantis, when the goddesses would heal people in amethyst geode caves, all the way to the more sophisticated and eventually dangerous. I think what brought Atlantis down was the extraordinary, extreme use and abuse of crystal technology. And isn't that what we have today? Isn't that the base of everything computer, the base of AI? Isn't it all silicate? So we're talking about a lot about Silicon Valley too. So let's break it all out. Where do you want to start, Dan? Should we start telling people about Marcel Vogel?
Yeah, yeah. Marcel was quite an interesting genius of his time. When he was 13 years old, he had a lab in his backyard that his dad helped him put together, and he was trying to figure out, how it inspired him. A firefly glowing. Why did a firefly glow? He had that kind of mind that would keep on seeking. And
Yeah, indeed.
he developed a company of luminescence, and IBM grabbed him up because he had this incredible creative mind. And he had like 200 and some patents. He developed the magnetic hard drives, the liquid crystals that we have on our screens that we're watching.
Yeah, in fact, that's how he became. I mean, he really became wealthy from that, didn't he? From the development of liquid silicate crystal for the industry
Well, if he
before he
was
decided to
wealthy,
back away.
he was humble about it. He didn't have an extravagant lifestyle or anything like that. He had a humble home in San Jose, and he
My point is that he reached that pinnacle, let's say, when IBM grabbed him up, and then he said, hold on a minute, this isn't what I want to do. This is not how I want to be using my knowledge. Does that resonate with you?
well, they kind of let him do because he was such a creative genius, and he'd come up with solutions. Like, he would work on it, and it would come to him in the middle of the night, how to solve something. It would come to him. And so they pretty much just gave him free reign, to do what he does. And in fact, he had to do a creativity course he had about 30 engineers at IBM that he wanted to teach them, how to be creative and thinking. So he grabbed this book out of Fate magazine, talking about Cleve Baxter, which was working with the CIA on plant experiments. And so we had all the engineers set up, with a plant, with a script chart recorder, to see if thoughts could affect the plant. And I remember he set it up with a split leaf philodendron, and he burned the plant, and the script chart went like that. And then the thought formed in his mind to burn the plant. As soon as that thought formed in his mind, the script chart went. He said that squiggle changed his life.
Wow.
Because he could see that, and then he did it from, what was it, 7 miles away, and was with a lab associate, and was able to tune into the plant mentally and cause it to squiggle. And then he went all the way on the other side of the planet, to Prague, Czechoslovakia.
No, this I
And
didn't know. This I didn't know. Don't tell me that he sent the thought to the plant.
oh yeah. And he was able to it showed that the inverse square law of distance, it's instantaneous. Everything's connected in mind instantaneously.
So are you saying that from Czechoslovakia, he still got the same reaction to the plant?
Exactly. It doesn't matter 7 miles away or on the other side of the planet. He could be on Mars, as far
What
as
a
that
lesson
goes.
for humanity to understand, huh?
Yeah.
I remember that when, what we talk about how I met him only briefly, unfortunately, but He told me about the experiment where he also was, yeah, he wanted to see if the plant was responding to his energetic vibrational imprint, physical imprint. So he rigged up a device that, because he would drop an egg into a pot of boiling water, and when he dropped the egg in, the plants would react, another spike. So he devised a sort of rigged up a sort of machine that would drop the egg for him, because he was trying to see if there was connection with the physical
Right.
essence of his hand. This is besides the conversation you're giving about his thought. And even then, even with the mechanical arm of a robot dropping the egg into the water, the plants still reacted severely when it made contact. So what
But
I mean, he sort of has that wonderful information that we got from Emoto in a different context. Same thing,
before
same
Emoto,
scientists
yes.
proving this consciousness and effect on matter.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We were able to, I helped, set up his lab with some of the equipment. I was working in the Naval Electronic Engineering Center, and I was able to get infrared spectrophotometers and things like that for the lab while he was still working with IBM, I knew him.
Oh boy.
And it's kind of an interesting, strange story of how I got involved with him. But I'm curious, how did you first meet
Okay,
Marcel?
I'll tell you mine and then you tell me yours, okay?
Okay.
So I was involved with a group of psychics who were friends with him, and one of them said, "Oh my God, you really." When they found out my story and my crystal background, and I was doing some pretty heavy duty crystal healing work. It's not just the laying on of stones. I was using crystals, going in and unlocking the auric field, going into the trauma centers of the body, and then my psychic sense that would have the body talking to me. And the crystal was like a laser beam. And then later, after I met Vogel, I got my hands on a Vogel Cut Crystal. For those of you who don't know, the Vogel Cut crystals were uh, highly sophisticated, tuned by psychics, cut by psychics. You've got one there?
Like that.
Oh, yeah. Is that a real one?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. This one Marcel cut for me personally as
Oh,
a
boy. How
gift
cool is that?
when this is originally started out with the four-sided, and then they started working up with more sides. Here's a 16
Oh, I love that
sided.
one. Well, I had a
Um,
seven-sided one, which worked just great since I was working on the chakra bodies. And I cannot find that crystal. It's driving me crazy. It's somewhere in the house. But anyway, so I met him because I was involved with a group of psychics who were involved with the Stanford Psychic Institute. And I was at a gathering and he was there. And I was just like, oh my God. It wasn't because of anything to do with his fame. It was simply because the energy of this man was extraordinary. And I felt an Atlantean connection and I felt the crystal connection. And I've been talking about him ever since. But unfortunately, I don't have any kind of deep knowledge like you do. It was an encounter that led to my working with his tools and his method from then on. So, how about you?
oh well, make a really long story short. As you know, my other hat I wear as a witness, because of the naval communications, we're receiving extraterrestrials coming out of the ocean. It put a seed in my mind. Curious about that. There was a UFO meeting in San Diego in the 70s, and I heard there was this elderly lady that had contact with a space being, and so I went there, and it was an interesting group. First time I ever went to one of those kind of meetings, and there was a guy who looked like a hitman from the mafia that was sitting in front, and during the lunch break, I went out into the parking lot, and she had her van out there, and the guy was. It turned out he was a hitman for the mafia. He was with a cigarette, and he says, "Look, I think you guys are a bunch of kooks. I don't know who to talk to. I'm losing my mind. And he's talked about he was going up in the mountains hunting, and he got up early. His friend was still sleeping. a ship came down and he went to pull his gun to shoot the beings that were coming out. They saw him, they grabbed his attention, put $1 million into his mind. That's all he could think about. Like looped a circuit. They took him on board, hit him with light beams, and then he started, bending spoons, developing a memory of his past life and a love. His friends couldn't associate with him anymore. Anyway, I talked to this lady who been writing telephone books of quatrains from this being that has been connecting with her, and everything would rhyme, with everything else and the whole history of the earth. And so he would talk through her. And so I had some property up in the mountains, and I went with her. I wanted to meet with the being. And out of a clear blue sky, she could see. And she, in fact, she took pictures and was published in Omni magazine, where they could see the videos of the spacecraft. And a beam came out of the sky, and out kind of clear blue sky. And anyway, for some time I communicated with her, and attempted to make communication with this being. This was back in the 70s. And so I was going out with this lady who was owned this metaphysical bookstore, and she wanted to do a past life regression on me. And so I accepted, and in the past life regression, it didn't turn out the way it normally does. I had this Kundalini experience of millions of volts going through my hands and my feet, and I could see with my eyes closed, this being with a large head and incredible energy, loving eyes, and as I'm observing this being, now I didn't know anything about uh, platonic solids or sacred geometry and all this stuff. This was like all totally new to me. And the being projected in space, a sphere. And as I'm watching the sphere, within the sphere, like a six-pointed star, it turned out like a star tetrahedron formed, and then another pattern formed into that one, and then another into that one, another one into that one, and it kept on going into infinity, and then it turned back into a sphere. And I don't know, Patricia, if this was something of a a metaphor type of teaching, or was actually based on science. But what the being was saying, that our consciousness at a particular level, through love, we evolve from one frequency geometry to the other. In actuality, all of us are a total sphere that encompasses all the harmonics and all the frequencies. But at any particular point in our evolution, we're aware of the subharmonics, but not of the higher harmonics. And as we're moved through this evolution. And so, I mean, it felt like the being was trying to bring my energy level up to be able to convey things to me, because my energy, and so it left a burning desire. I was grabbing every book I could this was 1977. And there wasn't a whole lot of books on sacred geometry and things back then, not like there is today. And so I ordered from England books, and I was like, tried to absorb everything I could to try to understand. This seemed to be a key to understanding the matrix of what we are in. It, like something profound it left in me. So I heard about the work of Marcel. He was the only scientist on the planet that was doing profound scientific research into crystals. Obviously, crystals hold a key because, different cultures around the world, and separated by vast expanses of time, have always held the crystals as having a special attribute of mind and consciousness. And so I I drove up to San Jose, and it was like in the middle of a storm. It's like 100-mile-per-hour gusts over the Golden Gate. And so I arrived at his home at night, knocked on the door. He opened the door, and I said, I've got to find out about your work, what you're doing, is fascinating. And the first thing he ever said to me, he says, "You're from another planet, aren't you?" And I said, "I don't know about that, but I want to find out about what you're doing." And so anyway, I sat down. There was a doctor. He was working with some medical doctors, and one was sitting on the couch. And so I sat next to him. He turned off all the lights, and we played classical music for what seemed like a half an hour in the dark. And then we had a little conversation. There was a knock on the door, and a woman came with her daughter that she heard about his work about healing with crystals. And her daughter had this on her ankle. It was sticking out about 3/4 of an inch, this tumor. And he worked on her with the crystal, using his technique of breath with the crystal. And I'm sitting on the couch with this doctor, and in front of us, it dematerialized out of our view. It like went to nothing. I mean, that left a lasting impression on me. I thought, this man has figured out this something, at the time I knew very little compared to what I've learned over the decades. But at the time, and he invited me to be a research associate at his laboratory. He was still working for IBM.
What an honor.
And so I was still working for the Naval Electronic Engineering Center, all the government stuff. And so I drove all the way to Arkansas and got thousands of crystals for the lab. And so, he cut this one as a gift for me, for doing that. And people were having incredible, even one guy had his sight returned. I used it, I don't know how many times, over 100, I'm sure, where I used this technique that he showed me. In fact, I remember one time I was flying back to San Diego. I got on the airplane, and it was right after he gave me that as a gift. And there was a football player sitting next to me on the airplane, and he's holding his knee in pain. Apparently he had some kind of knee injury or something like that. And I was thinking, well, I've been given a gift, and I should use this, and so I said, look, I'm not a doctor or anything. I'm kind of an experimental scientist, and if you'd like, I'd try a technique on you and see if it can't hurt you, and so we did it together. And when he got off the plane, he was pointing to from his parents, that guy, he cured my leg. He all the pain is gone. That was my first experience healing with a crystal.
Let me ask you, you say that we did it together. What do you mean as far as his involvement in the process of using the crystal to heal him?
Well, with the whole procedure is, you bring the energy up with the individual. I'm just kind of summarizing. There's a lot more detail. You bring the energy up, and then you have to link. You have to link into the person's energetic field, and there's a what he described as a critical rotational angle, like as you rotate the crystal at a particular angle, you will feel all of a sudden you hit resonance. It's like it's kind of like a feedback loop.
Yeah.
Once you're in resonance with the person, you work. So all you're doing is facilitating the person healing themselves. It's not just mere suggestion, but you're actually linking in through multiple dimensions into a more formative stage, because our physical holographic form that we have here is actually being generated from a higher dimensional frequency. And the crystal allows a coupling between these dimensions in order to connect it in. And what the person does is, and breath is key with all this, because
That's important.
as you inhale and as you exhale, it's not just merely, breathing in oxygen and oxygenating the blood and prana and everything like that. It's actually connected to a multidimensional information transfer, so that and also, when you ask, you receive, so say you have the person go in as I amplify, and actually creates a little bit more pain sometimes when you go in, and it increases the energy in the area where the disruption is of the natural healthy pattern. And so it allows the person to go in with their mind's eye and see where the core origin is, where is the root, where to be asked to be shown, where is the root of this disturbance. And it could come in any form. It can come as an emotion, a color, a pattern, or whatever it comes to, without judgment. You come in, you lock into it, that's your intention. And what you do is you work with the person, with the breath, and as the person he builds up the energy, a few breaths, and then get ready for the release, the person locks it onto their mind, and then you with them, it's all done at once. And Marcel would say, release, and he would go like that, and then
Yeah.
there'd be like an instantaneous transformation.
I'd like
And
to
I've seen
share
this
that
happen
this
so
is the
many
way I
times.
worked for 20 years. And that extraordinary process of feeling, the ultimate process of the whole work in this method was getting to that point where you could feel that point when you're coming in with the crystal. You can feel that lock, that point of resonance where you're in. And I just always marvel that when that would happen, everything just opened up. And I have also a very developed psychic faculty, so I would start to see blocks and holes and all kinds of information that was in the body electric, the physical, all the layers. But it was that process of getting in first and then breathing into the individual's breathing, so that, if you're exhaling and they're inhaling, there's no connection going on. I'm sure you'll agree with that. So being able to connect in, breathe into the individual, and be in that rhythmic resonance was so powerful. So powerful. And
Oh, yeah.
one thing I want to go back to before we keep going on this vein is when you were talking about this sphere that you saw and the tetrahedron and tetrahedron and tetrahedron, you just described the DNA activation that I have been teaching for years from the Sirians, that they always said, forget the double helix. The way that you return to Christ consciousness is first one strand to create a tetrahedral form at the at the cellular level, and then another tetrahedron comes into that, creating the star tetrahedron, and then another and another. And at that point, when you've got the 12 sided star, let's call it, which is the merging of 4 tetrahedral forms, which sounds to me a lot like what you experienced, what you saw was the process of returning to full Christ conscious DNA. I was very excited when you were talking about that, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
Oh, what's interesting is, after I went to Washington to testify, there was a meeting where, the Bush administration denied us to bring forth the witness scientists within the unacknowledged special access programs that could prove we have 0-point energy. Dr. Greer started meeting with scientists and things. There was a meeting in San Francisco, and we had a bunch of scientists come, and they all told their horror stories of, you know, what happened. Um, One of the scientists was a Swiss theoretical physicist who has gathered a lot of attention over the decades. Nassim Haramein, are you familiar with him?
Nassim, sure.
Yeah. You know, he's 64 tetrahedral grid and all this that he's done. Well, in 2001, I was sitting in a corner with him in this little room in San Francisco where all these scientists were, and he had his laptop open. He was showing me an energy device that was using this half dome of geometry that was producing enough power to light this light bulb. And, you know, I never shared the story with anyone. And I decided, well, maybe I should share with this person my experience that I had. And I explained to him the experience, and he said, yes, that's it. That's exactly it. That's the structure of the matrix. You know, that was kind of interesting. I got a confirmation. Uh, and, and what's most interesting is I had no idea of what platonic solids and that they fit one into the other. I had no concept whatsoever before that experience. And so it was like something profound, you know, and as the decades went by, all of a sudden I start finding out the entire universe is based on that. Everything from our DNA to the planets,
The DNA of the universe.
ah, from the Schwarzschild proton to the universe, it's a fractal relationship, and it goes into infinity. And there are so many elements. Even the periodic table of elements is based on a tetrahedral alignments that create the different elements that we have. The whole thing is based on geometry, and you know, as Marcel used to say, that the energies of mind are geometric, and that what we see in the world of crystallography is the same as in energies of mind. And you know, there is an interface there that happens with quartz. Now, the thing that fascinated me was, what is it with the quartz crystal that the energies of mind are able to interface with? What is it about this geometry? We know it's six-sided, right? We know it's made up of tetrahedrons within the structure. And what else is like that? Water. Water is six-sided, as snowflakes turn into six-sided, and it's tetrahedral. But there are different elements. The quartz, when it, excuse me, as it terminates naturally, is in a 52-degree angle. 52-degree angle is the same as the Great Pyramid in Giza, is 52 angle, which turns out that the sides are related to the golden mean ratio, which means it's a mathematical ratio that goes into infinity. 52 angle in quartz. Now, what is it in water? Water has intermolecular bonding angles of both 26 degrees and 104 degrees. Why is that significant? 2 times 26 is 52. Half of 104 is 52. I haven't heard anybody else, this is a term I use, I call it angular harmonic resonance. It's how Marcel was able to turn thousands of gallons of rot gut wine in a California winery into a California award-winning wine by taking a crystal and spinning the wine with, interesting, your crystal ball with the curl around it is a right hand spiral. He used a right hand spiral. The program that was put into the crystal is transferred harmonically into the water that's in the wine and change the vibrational structure of the wine to be a California warrant, thousands of gallons it ran through.
That's
And of course, you know, what we were trying to do at the time is trying to do something to make money for the lab, you know, and the trouble is, you know, you can't say, you know, the certain year wine or something was crystal enhanced, you know, but it won a California award. And Marcel once said to me, and I thought, you know, this was in the early 80s, that if we ever discover anything significant in the lab, the government will come in and clean out our lab. You know, I thought he was being conspiratorial until I've spent 10 years meeting with scientists and inventors. One physicist by the name of Mark Cummings, he was able to take a crystal and generate a huge amount of power coming out of it. It came in like a SWAT team and cleaned his whole laboratory out. And then he said, well, right, do you have to do this? And he said, you're trespassing. You know, there was trespassing, you know, big oil, you know, you know. So, and he's disappeared since then. I have not heard from him.
dear.
And so,
Don't like these disappearing alternative scientists much, right?
no. You know, another interesting thing is a friend of mine brought me this book on radionics. This is still after the ET experience that talked about this device that could it it killed all the insects on one side of the field of a photograph and not on the other. And I was able to actually acquire, and you know, I was good in electronics. I worked with electronic engineering with the Navy. And so I was able to reverse engineer it and find out how the equipment worked. You know, I'm not into the thing is I liked about crystal is more spiritual rather than when you're dealing with where you're doing with manipulation. It's more you're working more with the darker energies as far as I'm concerned. Probably why Atlantis went down.
Yep.
But one of the I built a number of radionic instruments, the Hieronymus, Copen devices, different ones. Marcel was able to get out of the laboratories of England the Delaware Camera, and that was one of the projects I worked with him. And it stood about 5.5 feet tall. You could take a drop of blood from a person. You line this up with magnetic north. You turn on the sound oscillators, and it had a cavity up above that had reflectors that reflected the energy onto a photographic plate. You could take a picture of somebody, like this woman was pregnant and she's 50 miles away, and it showed the fetus inside of her. And not only that, but it was the only radionic instrument I've seen that can go backwards and forwards in the time. It had a time spiral, and it can move forward and backwards at different levels. Now, I found papers afterward where they're able to take the Delaware photographs and find out that there's actually three-dimensional geometry in the photograph, what the camera was doing. This proves the basis of our reality is a fractal holographic projection.
Okay, hold on a minute. Let's make it a little more simple, okay?
Okay.
You say that this camera, was it, first of all, was it utilized by, it wasn't created by Marcel?
No, it was created by George Delaware in the 1950s in England.
Okay. And then my next question was, so you're saying that they used radionics to photograph a woman 50 miles away with this device?
Correct.
And please help me understand what you mean by it was able to move forward and back in time, because you lost me.
Yeah, and
I
it
mean,
was
obviously the concept doesn't lose me, but how possibly could that have been done?
It was patented by the European Patent Office, you know, in Paris, and it took tens of thousands of photographs. It wasn't just like a one-shot type of thing. How it was able to move back, you have to understand that radionics is nothing more than a tuning focus for the mind. And what we talked about, angular harmonic resonance, when you tune a radionic dial, you're tuning a dial at a particular angle. And what the radionic operator does is has a feedback, either they use a pendulum or a stick pad for resonance. And when they get to the point of resonance, they get a feedback. And so when you're able to tune into that person, now you have to understand that the person who created the radionic instrument, everything is linked intimately to consciousness, and that the person who believes a certain thing works in a particular way, it it sets up the structure in the 3D reality to work that way. Um, and I actually had that experience. Don't get me wrong, on the side note, but when I was working with the government, there was this. I was repairing different types of equipment, and this one came in from England, this Wheatstone bridge that the darn thing wouldn't work no matter what I did, and the schematic was written in England. They write everything backwards. Everything is laid out in differently, just like they go on the other side of the road and they switch light switches down to turn on, and everything's backwards. And so I had to redraw the schematic, and I visualized how every component worked, how it is supposed to work. And then when I did that, and the thing would not work, and as soon as I did that, it worked without me doing anything to it, but other than visualizing the function of how it worked. This is my own little experience I had with doing that. But the camera, another lady who unfortunately she got thrown in prison, Ruth Drown, in the 50s. She made the Drown Vision camera, which is similar, whereas one of her patients was in Ohio, that she's in Hollywood, and she had a witness, a link to him, which could be hair or blood drop or photograph or whatever that links to the person. He had an operation, and in the operation, I mean, I guess they do this once in a while, but the surgical tool was still inside. They sewed him up, and they left the surgical tool inside the person, and it showed clearly the surgical tool, which I thought was kind of interesting. Also, I knew a fellow named Trevor James Constable who had actual photographs from Adamski, where he had the cigar-shaped ship, and she did her camera on that, and you could see all the little spaceships inside of it. It turns out that it was actually, we find out many years later, it was the Nazis trying to fool us, with thinking it's the Space Brothers. Anyway, that's a long story. It goes into another thing. Let's see. The Delaware Camera. So the Delaware Camera was amazing. I worked with two other scientists on this. One was a specialist in acoustics, and the other one, I was more on the geometry side of the whole thing, and I noticed that the cavities inside the camera happened to be golden mean ratios, and they had these 3 sound oscillators. And it seems as though, from best my understanding of the camera and how it operated, was that once you could achieve resonance, the sound oscillators basically took in 3 different axes and created a 3-dimensional hologram in space, but it had a photographic plate, so we could only capture a slice of it. It was because of the silver emulsion was sensitive to these energies. Anyway, this is like the antiques. This is like the crystal radio set of today's modern, technologies. The stuff they have in the secret space programs, for example, where they understand the geometry and the science behind the DNA frequencies and how they can, with a med bed, recreate an arm or something that's been chopped off, or restructure and heal any disease. I mean, they've already gone way beyond what we on the other side of the curtain, so to speak, have been able to do, which is kind of sad, because you have this advanced understanding that's being withheld from humanity. Um, this camera was kind of like demonstrating the principles that you can tune in to a different aspect of time, regardless of time and space of an individual, and that the blood drop represented a fractal of the whole of the individual that we were able to resonate with and tune into. And this all relates with the crystals and everything, but anyway, don't mean to ramble on.
No, it's okay. I mean, getting inside of your scientific brain is a challenge, but it's very exciting. What do you know about time crystals?
What kind of crystals?
Time crystals.
Time?
Okay, let me read you something here. Dreamt up by the physics Nobel laureate Frank Wilczek in 2012, the notion of time crystals is now moving from theory to experiment, and could also lead to applications such as a new kind of atomic clock. And what they're talking about is, I'm surprised you haven't heard about this, because it's very, to me, it's very.
No, this is interesting. I don't know everything, that's for sure.
Ordinary crystals consist of atoms or molecules arranged regularly in space. But rather than having a periodicity, that's a tough word, in space, time crystals exhibit a periodicity in time. They display a dynamic, ever-changing mode of behavior that repeats regularly. Although Wilczek's original concept of time crystals as materials that show spontaneous temporal periodicity has been invalidated, it's possible to produce a variant of what he had in mind by driving a system out of equilibrium. Last year, time crystals of this other kind were demonstrated for the first time in a lab. And very quickly, 2 more varieties have been spotted, raising the possibility that time crystal behavior might be a rather common property of materials. Does that make any, does that
Well, it's interesting that, the crystal, as it grows, they grow in a left and a right hand spiral, one or the other. And spiral meaning that through the crystal is a spiraling energy that spirals. The spiral seems to be intimately connected with time. And in fact, the Delaware Camera, the mechanism within the camera, and by the way, all this and the patent for the camera and all the lab notes are at marcelvogel.org. Anybody wants to check it out. It had a time spiral of 7 turns like this that you can move forwards and backwards in the time as it gets shorter or a tighter spiral, you're moving forward in time, and as it gets larger, going backwards in time. And I'm not sure exactly how when they're saying their periodicity, it means that at regular intervals you're having something occur, but they're saying that the periodicity is happening in time rather than space.
Yeah.
Can
I read you a little more?
Something I need to look into,
Can I
to
read
see
you a
what
little
that's
more? Because
about.
I'd love to pick your brain about this. To understand time crystals, let's remind ourselves about ordinary crystals. Diamonds, say, break spatial symmetry because not every location is equivalent. Some locations have carbon atoms, others don't. If you shift or translate the diamond lattice by some arbitrary amount, it won't superimpose on the original lattice. The crystal structure has broken the translational symmetry of uniform space. But if you shift the lattice by some integer multiple of the spacing between atoms, it does superimpose, which means that the broken translational symmetry is periodic. We're going to have you translate that from science to the lay person. And here, this is the last part I want to read to you. But what if a material could break time translation symmetry, the symmetry that makes the system unchanged if you shift it forward by an arbitrary amount of time? In his original 2012 proposal, Wilczek considered a ring of quantum particles, the simplest 1D system without edges. He asked if there might be circumstances in which the lowest energy state of this ring breaks time translational symmetry such that it changes in time, but returns to the original state at periodic intervals. What are they?
Yeah, I have to dig into that one.
Complex.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. The
Sort of like quantum crystals, right?
yeah, it seems one thing that's consistent is for everything that there is the is not. Whatever, if there's space time, there's time space. So you also have this symmetry of the opposites occurring throughout creation. Yeah, it's interesting.
Like in your mind, your scientific mind, what would a time crystal look like? Would it be even a three-dimensional context?
I have no idea how they're referring to it, but if you look at if you study metaphysics and you study ancient occult writings, there's one writing of the stanzas of Dizion that talk about the matrix of being this hexagonal matrix, which is six-sided, with the center point being the point where spirit connects and through this matrix. And it's interesting that you have this hexagonal matrix that is made up of this tetrahedral structure, which all the geometries are able to form into. That the effect of when you take a crystal and you put physical pressure on it, you have basically what Pythagoras used to call the star of creation, a six-pointed star with a dot in the center. And when you have the dot in the center, that means that is the point of creation in the center. That when you put pressure on these positive and negative triads, what happens is it offsets it just a little bit. So the charge triads, which are negative and positive, are normally balanced and neutral in the center, are offset just a little bit. So you have trillions of these being offset, and it creates the spark on your cigarette lighter, when you it creates the voltage on the crystal, causes the piezoelectric effect. If the matrix is linked with these forms that are within the crystal that resonate throughout the structure, you think about Atlantis, the crystals that they used could affect everything. Remember, we were talking about Dr. Ray Brown, who I knew, and how he went into that pyramid in off the coast of Bimini that had this room that is kind of interesting, that now other people are finding things in Antarctica that have these rooms in it that they're illuminated with no source of light, where he described exactly that when he went into this room. This is underwater, and he's in a diving suit, and there's this room where
going into the room.
Yeah, there's this room that had 7 chairs in a circle, with one chair being higher, maybe the director of the other 6. And there's more detail about this eagle on the wall with talons holding a sun, and like a breastplate type of thing with crystals. But anyway, coming down from the ceiling was this golden rod, and at the tip of the rod had a ruby red crystal pointing at this pedestal that was in the center of these chairs, and it was holding a crystal sphere, a very unusual crystal sphere that about the size of a tennis ball. And within the sphere, it had this grid structure of like this pyramidal grid structure. You, this is in the 1970s, you know, that he had this experience, and there's like no way that anybody could produce this type of inside of a sphere like that. Anyway, he tried to cut part of the golden rod. You know, there were treasure hunters, right? And and so he took the sphere, and they heard his voice. All the divers heard his voice. You know, it said, you know, leave and don't come back, you know, or something like that. You know, and so anyway, and he showed it publicly.
I
Uh,
sat with it.
and you saw it, and you tuned into it, and I'm curious of your impression that you were able to get interfacing with your mind into that crystal sphere.
Well, it was quite amazing that I even had the opportunity, and I don't remember where it is that I don't remember where I met him. I think it was at a Crystal Skull convention in Milan, but I don't remember. But at any rate, when he walked into the room, it was, you could feel it already. I didn't have any idea about it. I didn't know any story about it, nothing. And somebody said to me, have you heard about the pyramids crystal? And I was not, you know, I mean, who doesn't hear about pyramids and crystals in our line of work? So I just said, what? And he said, Patricia, he said, Gray Brunt's got the Bimini crystal, and I didn't know anything about it, which was great. So, you know, we met, and he was very, very careful about it. Obviously, he was protecting it. But he looked at me, and I said, I'd love to be able to touch this. He said, well, I'm not really comfortable with that, but you can look at it. And I said, I'd like to hold it. So the best I could do was for him to clear everybody away and let me sit with my hands near it, and not actually hold it, but to sit with my hands around it at the table. And, you know, I was just getting I mean, what an honor, first of all, to have that experience. And, you know, it was very Atlantean to me. So I've got so much Atlantean recall anyway. I was just seeing all of this. But one of the first things that I saw was a sort of scientific laboratory kind of environment, because I think that the Atlanteans were very Marcel Vogel oriented, using science with crystals, not just crystal healing as we understand it, or work with crystals as we understand it. But my experience of it was just being transported, teleported. Oh, goody.
Oh, yeah, move that. That's the crystal, and that's the structure that was inside the crystal.
Yeah. Well, can you move out of the way again? Yeah, tell me that's an accident. A really remarkable object. And you've said that it was broken. It reportedly has been broken.
Well, after he passed away, you know, they gave him a hard time. A caretaker supposedly was, and this is a rough of the room. This is my poor Photoshop skills. You can just barely see the 7 chairs. There was a pedestal,
That's
and
okay.
this is a rod coming down.
Yeah.
What I heard happen was that they accidentally dropped and broke it.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I believe that's a cover story, you know, like the Nazis that wanted everything of occult knowledge and everything like that. I believe the cabal probably grabbed it, you know, and is using it with experiments, you know, because this was a profound device, you know, because this was something that these mines in a circle were obviously, and it was connecting up through the rod into this huge, massive, larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza, this huge, massive, with a crystal capstone pyramid that was covered by sand. But because of the storm that happened, it uncovered it, and he was able to find an entranceway into it. But the mines that were interfacing, and it was like burnt around where the hands were holding it, it was like high energy. And so apparently these mines work together.
You've frozen, Dan. I'm waiting for Dan to unfreeze here. I just want to say that there he is. Okay. You froze when you said these minds sitting around in a chair.
Oh, I was going to say probably similar to how these practitioners, three of them, created an agreed upon reality where the tumor actually dematerialized. This was interfaced into the pyramid. So this could have been a instrument that, although it was small, you can't underestimate the power of an object by its size. Was possibly interfacing into all of the Atlantic structure and affecting reality around
Yeah,
it.
I was going to say that what I picked up from it had nothing to do with the image of where he supposedly found it, but because I say supposedly because I don't know any of the people that claim to have been there, but I have every reason to believe it's true. But it's never been verified that I know of. But regardless, my experience of it had nothing to do with the location of it. It was this sense of this portal opening and the absolute connection to Atlantean technology and knowledge. And in the book Atlantis Rising talks about the crystal skulls, also in a circular formation, that when the 12 crystal skulls were united, the 13th holographic skull appeared in the center. So it has a resonance with that information, and it's breathtaking. I have been blessed to have had the moment to sit with that. Just awesome. Have you actually been with it?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I've
What was
been
your experience?
with it a lot. Yeah, it was quite a bit of, and Marcel too. He worked on it. He got quite a bit of energy coming off of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in fact Leonard Nimoy, Spock. He In Search of. They did a whole special on Dr. Ray Brown and going underneath that. You can still find it on YouTube somewhere.
Oh, I'd love to see
Um,
that. So were they able to prove that that was a true story?
well, yeah. In fact, it's documented in the Guinness Book of World Records because, he was, treasure hunting, and he came up, and they happened to be coming up right at the time that the propeller blade was coming up, and they hit him in the back, and he went way down, and he had this kind of a spiritual experience of connecting in with a little fish, and the little fish get eaten by bigger fish, and anyway, and incredible worlds and everything. And they brought him up. They were able to get him out, and they figured, he's dead. It's like way beyond the time. I forgot how long it is, but they said, well, it's routine procedure here. We have to do, resuscitation. He's dead, and they gave it to him, and all of a sudden he said like a light switch went on, and he came back alive. So he hit like the Guinness Book of World Records of being like, dead, and then being brought back during that experience. So
But at what point was he dead? I mean, I'm not following you. He went into
oh,
this pyramid.
they yeah, the propeller hit him and knocked him
Yeah.
out, and he was underwater for a long time. They were able to fish his body out, but it was like so long, without oxygen, that he's normally, they just thought he's dead, but that it's normal procedure to give resuscitation. And when they did, they were shocked to find out he came back alive.
And how does it, when did he pick up this sphere?
When did
In between this near-death experience, when did he get his hands on the sphere and bring it up?
I'm not sure if it happened, in relationship to time when that happened, but it was when he was treasure hunting in the area where he had the experience, and I'm not sure of the time frame when that happened, but yeah, there was I think there was 7 other crew members that all witnessed it, and
That also witnessed going into this pyramid and seeing this.
No, only he went into it, but he brought back the sphere.
So he was the chosen one.
Yeah, and I think there's more to the story. Don't quote me on it, but I think a lot of mysterious deaths happen around the whole thing. I'm not sure what that
that would make sense if you go up studying an ancient Atlantean or other temple of that intensity, that you might have some repercussions, especially if a voice is saying get out. Yikes. Personally, if I were in that situation and I heard a voice say get out, I wouldn't be taking anything away. Would you?
Well, they didn't have GPS at that time, but I would I would definitely mark it on GPS, they come back. No, you have to be respectful to the ancients.
The sphere. Well, let's try to shift gears now and talk about how this all relates to Atlantean crystal technology. And that picture that I showed you, this lifetime here, I recovered in a past life regression that I was the keeper of the mind light generators, and they were underground. And in these constant, talk about a repeating dream. It's finally stopped now because I brought it into consciousness when I did the book. But it was a troubled life. I would be underground, and there would be these stations, like electric stations, with these spirals, very Tesla-like energy or physics, and in the center of these spheres, and you would see these spheres with the light going into the coil, and then these spheres rising up and then coming back down, rising up and down, and then electric sparks in the middle of the spheres. Predominantly, what I recall seeing is light traveling up the spiral, and then the spheres lighting up like a coil inside, like a orichalcum or some sort of precious metal inside getting charged. And I was told in that experience that this was a difficult life for me, which in fact it must have been, because it was underground. And this woman who created these spirals also has a similar memory. And my experience of Atlantis is 100,000 years of civilization, light and dark, light and dark, light and dark. But that we reached a point in Atlantean civilization that is exactly like we are now. Abuse of technology, particularly crystal, and the downfall, or whatever it is that triggered the downfall, not only of the civilization, but of the earth itself. What are your feelings about that in relationships to your understanding of crystal energy? We've talked about
definitely abusing. There's so much deception, that we are actually we have advanced dramatically, but it's all been hidden from our civilization. And the planet is out of harmony with the sciences. We're not working in harmony with nature.
No.
And there's always certain people who want, or beings or races or something, that want to dominate and control the rest of of humanity. And one thing that set Marcel apart from all the other scientists was the factor of love. And that he said that when I love you, I empower you to be whole, and that our primary responsibility is to love. And love it with the whole, with the entire healing with the crystals. Love was an absolute integral part of that. You know, I mean, he was, well, you know, you met him, and you know, he was just a big teddy bear kind of guy, loved to give hugs, and
So
you know.
here's a question for you, a thought. So we know, I mean, we don't have time to go into how you program a crystal, and I think pretty much people that are tuning into this would know all about that, because there are a lot of people that know a lot about crystals and working with them. But so I'm thinking that these dark beings using Emoto's model of thinking conscious, putting conscious energy, negative energy into the water crystal and watching it destruct and just lose form and reflect
distorted patterns of
destroy the
hate,
geometry, the sacred
greed,
geometry.
and all that. Yeah,
And
versus love, which is perfect
which creates
symmetry, geometry.
exactly.
Yes.
So, you know, so thinking that these dark creatures that want to control the planet are really working on the not only the Earth crystalline grid, but also the AI computer crystalline grid to keep it resonating to the lower dark, whatever you want to call all that negative energy, and programming it mentally as a body of consciously negative human beings. Can we consider, we light workers consider that, yes, we work with crystals and we use them in all of our altars, etc. But what do you think about the idea of us undoing that negative imprint that they're putting into AI, which we fear, and the entire network? And instead of fearing AI, starting to send in patterns, geometric patterns of light and sacred geometry to undo that negative imprint. Am I rambling here? Or
You brought up an important element. You know, the fact that, you know, water, you know, as Marcel used to say, it's like on this, is this dipole in the water molecule. It's so sensitive that water will completely mirror its environment, you know, no matter what it is. And so, you know, he was able to, Dr. Emoto, to, at the moment of freezing, capture the geometry that's within once water goes from a liquid into a crystal. And, you know, when a person has, you know, I hate you, I want to, you know, it's like all this ugly, distorted energy in the crystal. It doesn't have any symmetry. Whereas gratitude, love,
respect, beauty.
yeah, beauty, you know, all those things on the other side of the negative, they create this beautiful, beautiful symmetry in crystal, which indicates that the structure of the matrix, the fundamental structure of the matrix, is love. And that a person that uses the dark energies doesn't have the power because they don't have the they're not in alignment with the matrix, if that makes any sense.
Well, the people that are listening are going to say, we don't want to be in alignment with the matrix. We want to be beyond the matrix. This is a real philosophical point. I get what you're saying about this physical matrix of creation, but we need to be careful with our terms here so we don't confuse people.
Yeah, love is, yeah, there's a lot of, you know, terminologies and things, you know, and trying to explain it in the scientific terms. Marcel was probably one of the only scientists that could kind of put love into a kind of a scientific framework.
Yes,
where love, when you love someone, you're at one with that person. You feel a unity with that person. When you're in love with life, you're at one with life.
So how do we go back to the question of how to undo or rewrite the vibrational essence of the abused AI computer crystal silicate memory information system, so that instead of just working with our crystals on our altars and in meditation, we start to undo the negative imprint that is being imposed upon the global AI. You get me my drift?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like you know, like the already happened, already done type of thing, where you when you acknowledge acknowledge the higher let's see, I had it right in the tip of my tongue. You know, it's like when you it's like when you use a crystal, and for example, say you're visualizing something. Okay, Marcel also used to say, you know, man is made in the image and likeness of God, therefore we create. We're all like fractal creators. We're all like a fractal God, so to speak. You know, where we all have we have that ability to create. And so when you visualize and you use the breath, you know, Marcel, when he was working with the plants, he discovered that when he used the breath, the script chart, you know, when he just did it with his mind, it would, you know, just do a little squiggle. But when he did it with intention, with the intention and with the breath, and he would do it through his nostrils and go like that, this strong pulse, the chart would go like that off the scale. And so he found that, and with the infrared spectrophotometer that I was able to procure for him, they found that you took a vial of water, and when you pulse the breath, new energy bands would appear, and you take a magnetic eraser and you erase it. In other words, the breath with the pulse actually changed the structure of the water. This is way before Dr. Emoto. And so when you use a crystal, any crystal, it doesn't have to be a special cut crystal. They all have that matrix within it. You know, different cultures around the world have used them. That's a beautiful one.
It's
Oh
not a
wow.
Vogel, but it's really powerful.
Yeah. Oh, that's gorgeous. Yeah, it's a double terminator. It's very powerful. Well, let's do an exercise, you and I. There's a lot of things going on in the world that aren't quite in harmony, let's just say. And let's visualize a transformation where all deceptions are being exposed and the world is transformed into the most benevolent outcome for all beings. And however you want to do it, you know, whatever floats your reality, you know.
Well, it's your suggestion, so take us through it. And if anybody has a crystal nearby, join in this exercise.
Yeah, let's do some Atlantean.
Yeah.
Let's put
So
some
let's
in the
take a minute and walk away from your screen and try to use quartz, pure quartz, and come back with your crystal, and we're going to do a little exercise here.
And it's simple. It's not complicated. It's just understanding the fundamental principles that we do create, and not any of us in our individuality has no effect. Every one of us has an effect because we're all a fractal of a larger collective mind which we interface in with. And the crystal connects into the multi-dimensions of this higher fractal mind. And so when you visualize reality and feel it and see it and accept it as already done, already happened, even though, you know, the evening news says one thing, you know, already create a reality that feeds into the collective. And take a deep breath in, and pulse the crystal with that intention. And then as though you drop the letter in the mailbox, and you know that I don't know about the mailbox these days, but you dropped the letter in the mailbox and you knew that that letter was going to be delivered faithfully. Know that it is so.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. A whole great spirit to that. Well,
and for the
Dan,
most benevolent outcome for all concerned.
yes, always. That I can't even tell you how important that is in all of my work and messages. Your intention is everything. It overrides everything. And so be sure that you understand how to use the highest good, the highest intention for all concerned, and it will be so. Dan, I can't believe it. It's already an hour and a half, so I'm going to wind things up. Always a delight to be with you. I think we're going to have probably people saying, could you take it to the next step and teach us more? And so you're going to have to come back and we'll do more. How does that sound?
I love exploring with you. It's always a delight.
Because, I don't have a scientific mind, and you have the delicious combination of this breathtaking science mind and this wonderful heart. And it's quite a combination. You're a great man, Dan Willis.
I hope it resonates with many out there
I'm
who
sure it will.
also
I want to
sense
thank you for
this.
giving us your time. And I don't think after that little experiment with the crystal, we need to say any last words. Just be grateful that you are here now, that you've chosen to be here now. No matter what it looks like, there is a greater purpose to what we're going through. So just remember that experiment, send it through the crystal, and let us also disarm the negativity in the system, working with our tools. And one of the great tools that we have is the crystalline matrix. Okay, Dan, I'm gonna let you go.
And sharing the notes, with everybody who wants to dig into research, Marcel Vogel, marcelvogel.org, and all the lab notes and everything are there, and everything we discussed.
And how about you? Give us your website.
Oh, it's just I did it. The site is dedicated to Marcel, marcelvogel.org.
Yeah, but what about your website for more information?
Oh, that is my website. It's just basically my notes of
okay.
It's a tribute to Marcel.
That's wonderful. Well, you were blessed to know him so deeply. I only got a little sampling, but I immediately knew he was an old Atlantean brother. So, and as are you. And as are many of the people that are listening. So thank you, Dan, and thank you all for tuning in to Beyond the Matrix. I hope you've had some insights tonight that have picked up your interest and awakened ancient memories. Take care. This is Patricia Cori and Dan Willis signing out. Love you guys. See you soon.